We're in the offices of Sermon Audio, and this is Stephen Lee. He's the founder and president of Sermon Audio. And you may know that one of the three pillars of Acorn Global Advance is United Prayer, followed by innovation and networking. And so Stephen Lee, back in 2019, was led by the Lord to start a United Global Prayer meeting over Zoom. And we just wanted to highlight that today and let Stephen maybe tell us a little bit about how that started, why it started, maybe even what he thinks some of the benefits of it are, and maybe even an invitation for others to join. So, Stephen, maybe thank you for joining us today. We're glad to have you. And just for your knowledge, unitedprayer.net is the location to find information on the United Prayer meeting. And Stephen hosts it on a normal basis, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I, Rick Cross, host it Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Meets every day at noon Eastern time, 2 hours earlier on Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. But I'll let Stephen talk about maybe the format and how it started and the format of the prayer meeting and what you might expect if you so choose to jump in for a trial run. But Stephen, thank you for your ministry, and maybe please tell us a little bit about how things started and how they continued.
Okay. Well, thanks, sir. Basically, it's very simple. If you look at church history, if you look at the pattern in even the Bible, Old Testament, New Testament with the early church, you have a very strong and consistent pattern of God's people coming together to pray when they are certainly in times of distress and when they're in a pressing situation. I would say that we're in such a situation today. This is something that we all feel. This is something that I felt a number of years ago. I'm involved with Sermon Audio, and we're happy to do that. And we send out sermons and preaching all over the world. But there is another component to gospel advance that I think is maybe weaker in the church today than it has been in the past. And that is the component of corporate prayer and prayer generally, but certainly corporate prayer specifically. And what we have seen, as I say, throughout the Old Testament and the Kings and with the early church and throughout church history is you've had these seasons where God's people would be awakened enough and fed up enough, I suppose, with the decline of the church and society all around them, where they would, in humility, gather together with other believers and call on God in this corporate, united fashion. And it should be noted that it was a united prayer meeting, meaning that there was strong benefit, there was strong meaning in gathering God's people together in a united fashion to call upon God. And especially if you look at the writings of Jonathan Edwards, First, Second, Third Great Awakening, New York Prayer Revival, prayer meetings always been featured very heavily in these times of refreshing from the Lord. So, taking a cue from the past and doing our best to follow what we say is kind of a blueprint that was left to us to this generation, we wanted to start an attempt. As a humble attempt, in Jonathan Edwards' words. It's just a humble attempt to call on people everywhere, God's people, to pray together. And we just set up a time where we could organize ourselves to say, on this time, let's gather with other believers, like-minded believers, and pray together, not for typically like a laundry list of needs and wants, which are appropriate in their place. But this time of prayer was specifically set up to call on God for the outpouring of His Spirit in our generation for the purpose of advancing His kingdom throughout the world. That's how it started. It's a very simple concept, and we've been doing it now for 800 or so consecutive days, more than that actually, but this is where we are today. And that's the reason why this has started.
Good. Could you maybe describe the format? What if somebody were to jump on, what would they expect? And maybe describe the culture that's been generated as a result.
So sure. So the format again is very simple. It's online because we're trying to meet with people from around the world, and frankly, that's the only way that this can be accomplished. So we're thankful that we have the ability to do this nowadays. But even though we understand that it's less than ideal, it's always better to be able to meet in person for anything, but certainly for prayer. But so it's online. It's over Zoom. We ask that people gather around a certain time, 12 p.m. Eastern time, and the format is very simple. We start with a, a little meditation, usually no longer than 10 minutes. Somebody, a different person each day, opens a word and just brings a simple meditation, something to do with prayer, to give us some guidance in our prayer time. And this is done not just to fill the minutes. This is actually a very important part of our prayer time, because what we've been explaining to the folks is that prayer is often our response to God's word. It's not just our own thoughts, and it's taking God's word, taking the direction and the guidance and the burdens that we get from God's word, and we're praying those things back to the Lord. That, we believe, is the strongest grounds on which we can be praying back to the Lord his own promises. And so there is that brief meditation on the word that we start with, helps us to give us direction in prayer. And then one by one, we have those on the call just for a few minutes each, take turns in praying. And they just unmute their mic. Everyone is muted. So we try to maintain good order in prayer time. It can get out of order very quickly, but we keep everyone muted. And when they want to pray, they unmute themselves and they pray. And the next one goes on from there. So it goes on for about an hour. And we start at 12, we end at 1. So it's an hour. It's a prayer meeting that lasts an hour.
And there's anywhere from maybe 50, 60, 70 people online, people from all over the world. Some people struggling with English, some people older, younger. Everybody's invited, and we have an eclectic group of people that we enjoy going before God's throne together. And we invite you to come with us. We invite you to join. UnitedPrayer.net has all of the information, and we're focused on, as Stephen said, we're focused on praying for revival and awakening for the advance of the kingdom of heaven. So if this is a burden of yours and you would like to see what's going on and maybe be a part of what's going on, and even then get to see God work in ways that can only be traced back to God's people praying, we'd love to have that. So God bless you. Thank you very much. Acorn Global Advance.